Right then, welcome back. Today we're going to have a look at this, the 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 1090RR Race Modified bike. Yeah, I quite like it. Trellis frame, a couple of forged bits and bobs linking it all together. I think it does what the Italians do best. I think it's both massively aggressive and highly attractive at the same time. It also helps that it's very, very, very good to use, but we'll get on that in a little while. We've gone for the Naked Attack series of events, which is in the World League. It's in the Superbikes, like sub-category 5 events, and the first one is Cadwell. What we did is we put everything back to 2 and 8. I don't remember what the setup was. I don't know if it was all the 5s, if we'd used it very much. And off we went. Now, the problem that we had is some of the tracks were quite awful to start on. There was quite a lot of falling off and quite a lot of getting frustrated. But perseverance is something that we're very good at. Never give up and all that balls. But yeah, Cadwell Fall, 5 laps. Now, race-wise... Never touched him, ref. Never ever touched him. Race-wise, the bike is very, very, very good to use. It's a very Honda-like setup when we get to that at the end of the video, as in we've given it a bit more support on the front end, and we've not really done a lot else with the back end. And I broke my golden rule of making changes once we were more than 2 or 3 events into the actual series. Now, normally after 1, 2, 3 events, we get a nice setup, we do a couple of time attacks, we put it in the top 10 a couple of times and I go, that's alright. But the bike just didn't quite feel right. So after chasing down the Spanish rider at Cadwell for 5 laps, we went on and did a time attack and did not too bad. The biggest issue I had was that the bike was struggling for rear grip. It did not want to drive cleanly, and not only that, when you turn the engine braking up and a few other bits and bobs, what it was doing is it wasn't slowing the bike down as much as I'd like. So you can see in this, I'm running into the corners a little bit quick. The Spanish rider just got further and further and further and further away into the distance. So I didn't want to go mad because I quite like the overall feel of the bike on a 2 and 8. So when we went to do the time attack, which the race lap for the Cadwell race was a 123.172, which would have put us, what, 12th? Yeah. So set the 11th place time as the ghost to chase, and then we'll see an immediate improvement. And we went in and we took 1 click off of the rear spring rate, just 1 click. I was tempted to pump the front up a little bit, which we'll come on to when we get down to what, the third race, we make a little tweak. But we went on to play at Cadwell. Hard to get clean laps at Cadwell. Clean laps at Cadwell are very, very, very difficult, especially the full circuit and the motorcycle circuit as well, that dodgy chicane. And the best we did was a 121.8, so we took what? 1.3 seconds out of the race time. So again, not a massive amount of difference between doing it and a 5-lapper. You've got the benefit of drafting bikes, so that's a little bit of a help. But on the time attacks, you're by yourself. The change, taking 1 click off the rear, all of a sudden the bike was driving rather than spinning the rear wheel, and that actually lowered the temperature on the back tyre a little bit. I used a medium front soft rear in the race. I used a medium front soft rear on the time attack. Now, it seems mad that taking a click off the spring rate and making the spring rate softer would lower the temperature of the tyre, but if you think about the physics of the change, we're allowing the spring to compress more, so more energy is going into that spring and that damper unit rather than that damper and that spring unit resisting that energy and then that just transferring it into the rear tyre, so that's causing it to spin. So it makes sense in a physics of the game way. It doesn't make any sense in the real world, but again, the two aren't one and the same. But that's a discussion for another video, possibly in a couple of weeks. But yeah, we took a click off the rear spring rate. The bike was loads better. It was stopping better. It was turning better. It was driving clean. You can see there, it's not going sideways as much as driving forwards. And we did a 121.883, and that would have dropped us into 7th place. Faster than the Super Naked that we set a time on, which I was genuinely surprised at. Now, there is another Brutale in 9th on a 121.7, but so we're 9/10 quicker than that. I did not think that this bike would be anywhere near as fast as the Street 5 V4. Turns out it is. It is a genuine option. Race 2, Interlagos, 5 laps in the wet. And there's some quick tracks into Lagos, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and the Algarve motorcycle layout. Like, seriously quick tracks. Into Lagos in the wet. So we made a change to the spring rate, so it drives forward better, more, whatever word we want to use. And then we go to a track that is all about rear traction. It's all about rear traction and drive, and then big long straights and tight corners. And it felt good initially. Normally I struggle with bikes on full wets for the first lap. I struggle to get the feel, what I need and bits and bobs. Got a little bit carried away. We're still only at lap 1. Ran it a little bit wide into turn 6, turn 7, not sure. And ended up all the way back down in 7th. Little bit of argy-bargy in the midfield, as there normally is. And then we started escorting people to the outside of the track to get past. Now, if you've watched the video for the Interlagos race, the full one, this corner, scary, nasty corner, no traction control on 0. Full beans, wet tyres on a now mildly moist track, no more than that. And I was a little bit nervous because all of a sudden all feel just vanished from the bike. It just sort of like went dead. Maybe it's half a lap, maybe it's 2/3 of a lap, just nothing happened. Couldn't get anything out of it, nothing whatsoever. And then the track got a little bit drier, and all of a sudden it's almost like the tyres just dropped a little bit of temperature, and I just could not feel anything. It wasn't the batteries in the controller, before someone makes a comment, because they were freshly charged and new. So yes, it definitely wasn't them. And we just ended up having to pick our way through, use the advantages the bike had. The drive, just that one click of difference on the back end made a whole world apart when it comes to the drive and getting out the corners and firing down the straights. This first sequence of bend, well, down the centre edge into 2, into 3, this corner, bumpy, nasty, just slightly changes its radius as well as you come out. Very, very difficult. I find it very hard, and I was trying to jump all over the manual tuck button as well, just to try and get that extra speed down the straight. Lo and behold, we're chasing a hedge abuser. What a surprise there. But yeah, lap 5, no one's got any tyres left, like struggling, things are getting way too warm, things are moving about. I mean, the Hayabusa on lap 5 on this track on wet tyres must have been an absolute handful, because they've got about 35 million horsepower. Down into turn 4, we're just running it a little bit hot, and as soon as I did that I knew that was it. That's race gone. Yeah, I could have smashed a rewind button and fixed it, but I don't like doing that, so I just tried for the rest of the lap just to nibble away going into the corners. That seemed to be where I had the advantage, and I just boiled the tyre into turn 10. Watch that front tyre, whoa, the pad was going mad, vibrating on my hands. But again, the bike, this setup just seemed to work for these tracks. I could have probably made the changes that I made at Okayama, which is, well, Canadian Tire next and then Okayama, so race 4. I could have possibly made the changes a little bit earlier, but it didn't really present itself as too much of a problem. And we ended up on a 136.0. It's wet, so as a yardstick we were miles down. 96th we had to go down to before we found the time that we'd set on wets. And I say wets, but it's not really, it's dries, and it's a wet tyre and a dry track. But I'll take that, 136.081, 96th. Did a time attack, we did a lot of laps, and lap 19, 129.758. So that is what, 6.3 seconds faster. Normally, general rule of thumb, 5 seconds between a wet lap and a dry lap. That is usually there or thereabouts. Any more than 5 seconds and you're making a hell of a difference. Why is it such a big difference into Lagos? It's just a fast track, isn't it? Some of the corners are really high speed. Yes, the braking zones are large, as in you're getting rid of a lot of speed, but excuse me, they're quite short and sharp. You're on the brakes, you turn, you're up, you're accelerating again. No changes to the bike. We ran hard front, soft rear. Interlagos is a little bit like UMC in that it will boil a soft or a medium front tyre up quite quickly. And the bike was really good, sliding about, moving about. Again, I quite like it. It's got grip, it turns well, it stops well, but it doesn't mind moving about as well. It'll run straight. It's not a massive fan of bumps, but again, we'll cover that when we come on to the pros and cons at the end. But all in all, I was feeling quite smug, quite happy that we had turned the bike into something that was, I say turned, we'd changed about 4 things and turned the bike into something that was mega usable, quick, setting fast times. I mean, we went 7th at Cadwell, we've gone 4th here. There's only one track that we were outside the top 10, and that was Algarve, the one at the end. But yeah, all in all, very usable. I think it sounds mega as well, that 4-cylinder lump. It's not revving massively high, it's no Panigale or R6, or maybe it's a Fireblade, is it? 12 and a bit thousand RPM, so it's not mega fast, but 129.7, and we went to the leaderboards. I've not really put anything else round there, which I was surprised at, especially, well, race modified naked, because there's quite a few nice bikes, and that would have put us 4th. Again, in a sea of super nakeds, a couple of Chuonos in there. Katana, that is a quick lap on a Katana, crikey, 840, 130 point, wow, that's going some. Next race, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, another track that I really like, very similar to Interlagos in its layout, plenty of elevation changes, quick, fast corners, tight corners, just generally a mix. I think those 3 tracks, UMC out at Interlagos and Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, if you can get a bike working on all 3 of them, you'll have a bike that will work pretty much anywhere, apart from Okayama, as we'll find out in a minute. But yeah, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, not been for a while, kind of forgot that you need to be careful as you're going over the crests on the downhill left-handers that you don't run too wide. AI were getting grumpy, banging and barging and just generally trying to make a nuisance of themselves. And this was the first race where I thought, there's a little bit something extra in this bike. I just need to work out what to do to get it. It struggled into here. Now, the next race at Okayama is... the track's quick, but at the same time it's also nasty and nadgery, and there's nasty corners where the track like really narrows in with a GP and the Piper circuit joined together. You've got to be very accurate with your line, and this bit on the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park is the same. Again, never touched him, ref. That's 2 from 2. It's good job there's no long lap penalties. Ooh, now that's an idea for Ride 5, isn't it? Could have a penalty system, bump people off, you get a long lap penalty. Oh, it's too late now, isn't it, because they've announced it. But that's another video that's coming next week as well. A little look-see at Ride 5 and my general musings and thoughts. But it took us to lap 5 to get past. Again, front tyre cold. I ran, a medium front. It was cloudy. Again, I'm not massively convinced that there's a thermal model for the track. I think it might be, yes, he was very keen. I replayed that about 4 times and couldn't work out whether we actually touched or not. I think there was a little touch, that's why they went down, and I nearly crashed on the grass, but by the by. Yeah, I'm not convinced it's a thermal model. I just think the ambient air temperature affects the temperature of the tyre. We did a 115.7, which would have put us 31st. So we set 30th as the Ghost, and we went away. And we did, again, a few laps. I'd not been there for a while, so I was struggling. And we ended up doing a 114.006, so 1.7 seconds faster and a handful of change. No adjustments to the bike. We just decided to go and absolutely try and go around the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park as fast as we could. There's a little bit of leeway on curbs, but be careful, they will buckaroo and try and kick you off. The downhill left-handers, like I said, completely forgot that you've got to be careful over the crests, just running wide and getting invalid laps, and generally just absolutely struggling. Good drive from the bike. It was just this bit of the track, down here, down, over the brow of the hill, down into the dip, and then on the brakes, the front end of the bike just went almost like rock solid. It didn't really want to turn. It was hard to get it to do what I wanted to do, a little bit of gas to try and get it to turn. It just wouldn't do anything. So my suspicions were the front end was just on the absolute limit, possibly bottoming out a little bit. So there was some adjustments to be made to try and counter that. And this bit's a nice bit of the track as well, over the brow. If you're on something really quick, the braking point is just as you get to the brow, and you can have a little bit of fun doing a top rack and waggling the rear wheel in the air like you just don't care. But yes, 114.006, medium softs again, not really gone away from that soft rear tyre, the bike will run lap after lap after lap. We get the notification we've beat or recommend a ghost, which doesn't mean you're fastest, it just means that you have beat potentially the best time that's currently been set for that bike. So 1:14.066:10. So again, just on the cusp of the top 10. But look at that, a sea of Ducati super naked Street Fighter V4s, whatever we're calling them. So on to Okayama. Again, cloudy-ish, so there was the worry about tyre temp. I went a medium front. I should have really gone a hard front, but I just thought I'd try and blag it. Didn't make any changes for the race. What I did was made the changes when I wasn't recording, and I thought I'd recorded them between the race and the time attack, but obviously I hadn't, so I dropped a bit of a clanger there. But it was the usual Okayama race. The AI were on it from the word go, sticking it at the inside, generally just making a nuisance of themselves. Had to be mega aggressive off the start. There was about 50 restarts on this as well, just crashing left, right, centre, up, down, you name it. Almost wiped everybody out going into the hairpin at turn 5, and had to sort of like run around the outside and blag my way back up into third. Mega aggressive through turn 3. Nearly paid the price for it on the curb, but again, some bikes, the 2010 Aprilia RS V4 would quite happily take that. I don't think the Japanese was very happy that I did an absolute filthy move up the inside of the hairpin on lap 3, and that's basically how it stayed. But yeah, the bike doesn't like bumps. A rear focus circuit again, and because the front end didn't really want to play ball, I was having to use the rear of the bike to do a bit of the turning, hence we're spinning the rear of the bike up, and we've pretty much chomped through a soft rear tyre in quite a short order of time. We would have gone 1:26.821, we would have gone 13th. I was getting annoyed with the notification in the corner that sits there for absolutely ages, but yeah, 1:26.821, that would have put us there, 13th, there you go. So we set 12th, and we did quite a few laps again. It's quite a quick lap, 1:26. It doesn't feel like a 1:26. I mean, Canadian tyres 1:15 and Interlagos is 1:29, but this feels like a quick lap for some reason. So what I did is I added 2 to the front spring hardness and compression, essentially set it to 10, and then added 1 to the rebound. Now, when I first tried it, it didn't really work very well. The bike was running wide again, it was a bit understeery, so I took 1 off the preload. So that's 2 to the front spring hardness, 2 to compression, 1 to rebound. They're all plus, and then with -1, we've took 1 away from the front preload. Now, there has to be a counterbalance change to the rear, otherwise we're just going to end up with a massively supported front end, and that's going to just move energy into the back end, and we're going to be all over the shop. So to counteract that movement of energy, I took -1 from the rear compression. 0 is the slowest that the shock will move, and 10 is the quickest. Obviously 10, the adjuster is open, 0, the adjuster's closed. So imagine a pipe with fluid going through it is essentially what it does. So if you go to 0, you close that pipe off, you restrict the amount of oil going through it, and that means that the shock can't move. And then when you get on the gas, rather than blowing through the travel on the spring and the damper will actually give the spring a bit of support, and it will stop that movement quite as quickly. Hope that makes sense. But we ended up doing a 1:26.054, 0.8, just under 0.8 quicker. Tyres much better. It still wanted to slide about with the rear, and we ended up 5th. So again, quick. It is a quick bike with a bit more mucking about, going into individual circuits and mucking on with gears and bits and bobs. I'm sure that we could go a little bit quicker, but it's time, isn't it? I am 15 hours into the Nürburgring 24-hour endurance race, the last one, and me and the Aprilia aren't getting on very well. We're leading, but it's more difficult than it should be. Last race, Algarve, motorcycle layout. So that means it's got just the normal one, it doesn't have that dodgy chicane after the hill and turn 1. I absolutely adore this track. It is difficult. That was a virus. You don't see the viruses very often, do you? The virus. Very good. It's difficult, it's bumpy, it's twisty, it's got loads of elevation changes. It is a proper test of a motorcycle. It is a nightmare trying to set quick, clean laps. The AI loves sticking it into the corner, then putting the brakes on. I was convinced that there was a nice door for me to go through there, and we ended up just easing the Portuguese on the Ducati out the way, and then we're chasing, guess what? You know what we're chasing, yes, a hedge abuser. And this was quite possibly one of the best battles, whatever you want to call it, with the AI. I mean, look at that, pure cheek, running, how dare he run me wide to the edge of the track. I would never consider doing that to another rider, ever, maybe. But yeah, out of the turn 8, a little hairpin up the hill, trying to control the wheelies. You can see him fighting, or them, Flavio, him, yeah, possibly they. You can see them fighting it over the line to start the last lap. I was definitely going around the outside, waving the rear wheel as we go past. Run a little bit wide. I'm in third and not second, so the bike wants to move about. We've absolutely mullered the rear tyre. Got no rear tyre left, hardly at all. We're on a hard front, soft rear. We're wide again. We managed to pull it back. These bumps, I just can't get on with them bumps around that corner. Into the hairpin, second and not first, which means we run wide on the exit because the bike was not pulling us back, it's pushing us forward, and then they get up the inside. It was just one of these last laps where no matter what I did, they just managed to put that bike perfectly in the way. Absolutely perfectly in the way. I didn't have quite enough rear drive. It wanted to wheelie. So again, there's more tweaking in it to make it quicker, but I'm loath to get rid of its character. And it's very good to use. It will fight you. I mean, that slide there, a lot of the bikes you'd be off the side of it, but for some reason it just likes moving about. It'll ride wheels in line, as I said before, but it will move about. It'll do whatever you want. And it was just a very, very, very entertaining sort of like 2 and a bit laps chasing down the hedge abuser, trying, like, understandably a massive power and torque deficit. Yes, it weighs 19 tons, but it's still like an absolute missile in a straight line. Trying to set him up into the last corner to go through here, just run a bit tighter, and I go in probably 5-6 miles an hour too fast, run a bit wide, but we'd square it off. We just could not be any more efficient. Up over the brow of the hill, trying not to let it wheelie because that'll kill your speed, and I thought, no way, we're getting out dragged. And to me, they were in front of where we were. Now, I don't know whether they had a penalty. I don't know if the AI riders get penalties. Obviously not according to that, but it was a dead heat. Plus 0000. I'm not convinced. I think it should have been plus 001 or maybe something like that. But we did a 144 dead, which would have put us 27th, and that was on a hard soft. So yeah, 27th, set 25th is a thing. We went to 6 laps again. First 3 laps were very hard to come by, clean laps, and we ended up with a 142.4, so 1.6 seconds quicker. Not a massive jump up the leaderboards, actually. I thought that it was going to jump us right up the leaderboards, and it did not. And we don't have to watch the full lap, absolutely not. So as we're coming into the last corner now, you can see the tyres. I mean, they're a little bit warm, nothing major. The rear is in a very nice place. The front, we just pushed it through the last 2 or 3 turns and it doesn't really like it. Try not to let it wheelie over the hump and then down the straight. The Algarve, Portimao, whatever you want to call it, circuit in the sunshine is just mega. That is probably my favourite track. Of all the tracks on there, probably my favourite track. We'd done a time on the KTM before, 43.2, we'd done a 42.4, so we're 8 tenths quicker than that, and we ended up, 15th? So that's the only track we're out of the top 10, and if you look at the leaderboard, it is just Ducatis absolutely everywhere. There's nothing you can do, it's just pure Ducatis. There's the set-in, so 10 and 1 on the front, bit of a muck about, we're preloading bits and bobs, we sorted the gears out. Rake and trail as well on 1, just to make it turn that little bit quicker, so a little bit of a steeper fork and a bit of a shorter wheelbase. Mediums or hards on the front, and what did I say? Mediums or softs on the back. Pros, better to use in the Street Fighter V4S. I think it is. I think it's a easier bike to use. It's not trying to pull your face off all the time. Also, everyone uses the V4, but we'll come to that in a minute. Nailed front end. The front end is very, very, very good once you get it where it wants to be. It's a combination of preload and the spring settings and everything else. Once you get it right, it's absolutely mega. 4-cylinder screamer. The V4 on the Ducati is probably one of the best engines ever made. It is, but it sounds like a twin. I like V-twins, I like V4s, but there's just something about an Italian inline 4 This bike just sounds fantastic. This and the Kawasaki sound like they're ripping the air to pieces, and I quite like that. Cons, it struggles for rear grip. It does. You've got to muck about with the spring rate. It will slide about a bit, so you've got to be careful. It does not like bumps. It does not. It will spit you off, it'll kick you off. If you've got the bump when you brakes, it'll slide, it'll move about. You've got to be very, very careful where you ride, and everybody uses the Street Fighter. And that's the problem, because this doesn't get a look in, because the Street Fighter is quicker. This is almost as fast, and if you prefer this bike and you can set it up to how you like it, you will go quicker on this, but everybody uses the Street Fighter. But it is bonny. It is a very, very, very good looking bike. I'm a big fan. Red cylinder head, red frame, everything else. Even the road bike version I think is a very, very, very good looking bike, and I would quite happily have one in my garage if I won the lottery. Not a problem. I would more than happily take that out on a sunny Sunday. But there you go. Thanks for watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, all the usual jazz, and fingers crossed I will see you next time. Take care, stay safe, peace.